Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, where we explore the journeys of exceptional individuals who have achieved remarkable success in their fields. Whether you're an aspiring athlete, a business leader, or simply someone striving to reach your full potential, this podcast is your guide to unlocking the greatness within you. Join us as we dive into inspiring stories, practical strategies, and the mindset shifts that can transform your path to greatness. Let's embark on this journey together. Unleash your potential with Concrete Consulting. Are you a student athlete striving for greatness? Do you want to enhance your mental performance and elevate your game? At Concrete, we specialize in mental performance and success coaching tailored for student athletes, parents, and coaches. Our expert coaches provide personalized strategies to boost confidence, improve focus, and achieve your goals both on and off the field. Don't just play the game, conquer it. Visit concreteconsulting.com and schedule your free consultation today. Take the first step towards success. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, and today's show has Dan LaForest, and he's one of the founders of the Influencer Council. But as he said, he is a huge fan of high school athletics and high school football in the Central Florida area and really nationally as well. And that's how I became familiar with him. And we talk about just who he is and what he's all about. And we have a great conversation that is going to leave you equipped with some things to think about. And for me, the two big things that I took away that I want you to look for that red thread throughout this episode is one is the importance of being available for others. And the other one is having an open mind. So those are two things that I really want you to think about. And when you think about having an open mind, it's not just about others, but it's about yourself as well. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Dan LaForest. Hey, everybody, welcome back. And on today's episode, I have Dan LaForest, and I've been a fan of his for a while. He is, I guess, would you consider yourself a guru of high school football and all things considered in the Central Florida area?
Let's just call it I'm the biggest fan, probably. I don't like gurus or experts or anything like that, but yeah, I'm just a big fan, man, to be honest.
Yeah, so he's well known in the area and has a lot of influence just in want to help student athletes and helping these young men that play football and the coaches and the families and everybody around. And it's been fun to watch how you've evolved from when I first was aware of you. And I first learned of you through Low Wood. I had him on the podcast. He was one of my first episodes in the first season. And that's where I've learned about you, and then watching your show with the other guys during the football season. So all my listeners know that I have a son who plays football and a daughter who plays volleyball. So sports are near and dear to my heart. And that's why I think Dan and I have gotten together, and we hit it off. There you go. I couldn't think of the word for a second. So Dan, welcome to the show.
No, I appreciate this opportunity, Jeff.
Yep. So before we get started doing all the formal conversation, I like to play a game called Would You Rather. You ready?
Ooh.
Would you rather go forward 100 years or back 100 years?
Man, I tell you what, that's a double-edged sword right there. How about if we move forward 20 and go back 20? I would live with that real quick.
Okay.
But if I had to choose one, I would want to go back.
Okay. Why so?
Only because I think that, to me, the joy of life is the unknown. I don't want to know what's going to happen. I think it's more, I think for me, what's most intriguing, if I were able to go backward, is to watch things I already know happened and ask myself how. I mean, we all have memories of our childhood, but, as we get older, man, we only remember certain things, right? I think to go back and actually see things actually unfolded versus what we remembered is probably the most intriguing part of that question.
Yeah, I like that because we have selective memory, and we like to remember things the way we wanted to have been and not necessarily how it was. Now, with your other response, the back 20, forward 20, Talk to me about what that's all about.
I think it's the best of both worlds. I just think it's, if you went back 20 years, that would put me back in my 30s, which was a pivotal time in my life from a maturity standpoint. I didn't get married till I was 38 years old. I didn't really get a good grasp in business until I was in my 30s. 20s, my 20s to me were all about fun and opportunity and taking advantage of situations. I think the next 20 years are really, really exciting because, I'm in my mid 50s now. I have a granddaughter now that's going to turn 2. To know who she is as a young woman, to know how my kids have evolved. I think some insight into that would be very intriguing. But, again, I love life. I love the unknown, and I like to write my own book. So I really don't want to know what's going to happen. Because some of that may not be things I want to see.
Yeah. And that's the hard truth of we all think that everything's going to be great and all rosy, but it could be the complete opposite. I mean, look at Back to the Future. You had certain things happened in the past. He fixed it. But then when you went forward, everything went the opposite of what he had hoped.
Yeah. I think it's, I think life is meant to be a mystery. We talk about faith, we talk about opportunity, we talk about so many things as we take this journey. I think what's exciting the most is the fact that it's unwritten, and there's so many great opportunities that are ahead of all of us. One of the most frustrating things with people is, they'll say, I've never had an opportunity. I've never had that. And I just believe that that's not true. I think that understanding that opportunity is all around us, it's having the ability to identify what that looks like or what it potentially could be is the key for people to generate their own luck. I had a football coach that said, the definition of luck is when preparation meets opportunity. But I hate the word luck. I think, I actually ask these people this is, have you heard of the Lucky 500? And they're like, no, what's that? Now, have you heard of the Fortune 500? Luck is what happens to people who don't deserve it. Fortune is built, and hard work goes into that. That's why there's a Fortune 500, not a Lucky 500. People win the lottery are lucky. People who are successful are fortunate. I'm very fortunate to have. I don't believe luck had any part of it. I think success is a multitude of things, and that's a whole nother definition I think we're most likely going to talk about.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I'm glad that you brought up the word opportunity, because really, like right before I sat down to hit record and us come together, I thought of that. The exact phrase is that where opportunity is there, because where my head went first was missed opportunity. Well, there are missed opportunities, and there are opportunities that can be taken advantage of. And that's what we have to understand is the opportunities are there. We just have to understand and have the clarity or be taught how to see opportunities, because like you're in, your day job is all about like being aware of opportunities to take advantage of. And it's understanding and reading the room and reading the situation and the graphs and everything that you have to see is say, okay, that's an opportunity that most people aren't aware of. And then they take advantage of it. And that's where we always have to be aware and alert. So that way, when an opportunity presents itself, we take advantage of it. My neighbor, he's highly successful financially. And one of the things he told me a couple of years ago is he just understood he was going to have to say yes to a lot of stuff when things would present themselves. And he thought, wow, that's crazy. That's wild. I can't believe it. He'd say yes because he needed to be in the rooms that required him to say yes.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that, my greatest mentor when I got into the financial services industry, what I learned from him, and this is what I cherish the most. he didn't tell me what he did great to make him successful. He shared his failures with me. And I felt like that gave me such an upper hand, because it's kind of like what young people don't understand, what the evolution of travel has become. It used to be when you and I grew up, we used to look at our route and we get a map and go, okay, we're going to take these roads, and we have to wait and see how far we are from a road. Now you have GPS that literally shows you that there's a traffic jam 6 miles ahead. And anytime you can pivot, you can put yourself in a position to pivot, you're ahead of it. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't, they look at what's in front of them right here. Like if you were to use an analogy, if I'm driving down the road, how far down the road can you actually see? Maybe a mile. But the key to driving isn't watching the car in front of you. It's watching 5 cars in front of you, right? So to have the ability to look down the road and see potential pitfalls, not that you're going to avoid them, but at least you're aware of what they could be. I think that is critical in your thought process. And, especially, it doesn't matter what your objective is, whether you're an employee, how am I going to get that raise? How am I going to get that promotion? Or if I'm a business owner, how am I going to achieve that next level of success? Because if you're not thinking that way, then you're not going to achieve it.
Yeah, and I like the analogy when you talked about ways. And that's where, when we think, several things that you said in there that I really liked. One is the ways analogy, and then 2 is the failures of, the failures make us who we are, and how we overcome them. And that's where, going back to your statement earlier about going back 100 years, is that if we could fix the failures, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be better off. It means that we're probably going to be hit with another failure, that learning from that one earlier helped us prevent and move on. And so the lesson that hopefully the listeners hear, and that if any young people are listening, is find a mentor and someone who's been there to be your ways, to tell you there's a accident 6 miles ahead. You need to get off on this exit if you want to continue to move forward. Will it take you an extra 10 minutes? Yes, but you won't be sitting dead still in the middle of the road, maybe for 30 minutes, 4 hours, whatever it may be. Is take advantage of those people who are your ways, your GPS on your phone.
I think that's why I enjoy my profession. I enjoy the things that I do outside of it, because when you have the opportunity, and I've always saw myself, as a coach, whether it be financial coaching, whether it's athletic coaching, whether it's life coaching. I think one of the funniest questions, and I say funny, it's not funny, but intriguing, is, what do you do? And my answer is always, I do whatever I have to make sure my clients are secure. And money is only a piece of it. Sometimes I'm a life coach. Sometimes I'm a marriage counselor. Sometimes I'm a referee. Sometimes I'm a consoler. Sometimes I'm a cheerleader. You can go get a portfolio anywhere. I can walk into a bank. You can throw a financial firm. You throw a rock and find a financial firm. But what I enjoy doing is helping people predict the unknown and be there for them. One of my good friends I grew up with, played in the NFL, a lot of people may know, is Sammy Smith. And he said, one of the best advice I was given years ago was, your best ability is availability. Is being available for people when they need you the most. And I've always taken that to heart, because I believe that is my greatest superpower, is just being there. When your family needs you, when your kids need you, knowing when your spouse needs you. You have to give people enough room to breathe, but at the same time is you have to be available. That's what makes you credible. That's what makes you reliable. And I think these are all lessons that everybody at every age, especially young people, have to understand, is the fact that, I was asked how to define success. You have people that want to be successful. And I ask them, what are you doing to achieve that? Well, I work hard. I work hard. Well, my answer is everybody works hard. The key to success is not how hard you work. And you nailed it earlier. It's your ability to overcome failure. Because if you're not failing, you're not going to succeed. If you are not open to put yourself out there where you could fail, then your chances of success is zero. The ability to overcome failure is that secret sauce. First of all, it's accepting. I'm going to embrace the fact that I'm going to fail. It doesn't matter what my next great idea is. It's most likely going to fail.
But at least you tried.
Yeah, because I love talking to young people, especially, I had the opportunity to go speak, be part of the UCF Athletic Vendor Day. It was kind of it's a networking event where all these athletes come in and they talk to, prospective employers, and they talk to people that, could kind of give them guidance. I come in there and I've got my security financial booth set up, and they'll come over and we'll start talking. And I'll ask them simple questions like, well, what's your major in? When do you graduate? What are you going to do with it? And a lot of them are looking at me like, I have no idea. Have you done an internship? Well, no, I haven't. I've got kids that'll reach out to me. I just graduated and I have a degree in finance. Can you help me find a job? Find a job. I'm getting a degree in business because I'm going to run a business one day. Yeah, that degree in business doesn't mean you can run a business. I think you're right. The mentorship is so incredible, and we have so many great leaders in the area, especially in Central Florida, that have the ability to impact people. If I have employees, like I tell my kids, I said, when you go out and get your first job, it doesn't matter what the job's in. Your number one job is to make your boss look good, whatever it takes. If you can accomplish that task, your future is bright, because I'm telling you, at the end of the day, when you're being interviewed for a job, that person is responsible for hiring that next 1, 2, maybe 5 people that are tasked to do a task. What is going to differentiate you from the other 600 applicants? And to me, it's the personal connection. Because if they're hiring 5 people and you're number 6, I want to make an impact where, hey, I really like these other 5, but man, it's hard for me to not pick this one. Most likely 1 or 2 of those 5 are going to fall off the map. And you're the next phone call. There is no other interview process. And I think that's critical to understand, no matter how old you are, is your ability to impact your future starts with a relationship.
Yep. It's the in sales, it's all it's emotion and logic. And so it's easy to connect the dots with the logic of why you should pick me, why you should be a part of me. But if you don't have that emotional connection, that's where it falls off. Because why do people buy super expensive cars? It's the emotion. It has nothing to do with the logic, because a car is a car, and whatever I can get is going to get me from point A to point B safely. But why do people spend $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, $1 million on a car? It's the emotional draw. It's those things that they've connected in their mind to create logic. So many times emotion, if we're not careful, will make us feel like we're being logical, because like, oh, well, that car's an investment, or that's an investment. It's like, no, it's not. It's just you're buying off of emotion, which is perfectly okay, but call it what it is. I want that car, whether I can afford it or not. That's a whole other conversation, but that's where people are drawn. And I like what you use again, drew the picture of, there's 6 people sitting there. How do you stand out? And that's life. Like you said, it's the opportunity to build and draw people in, make them feel important, but then also show them that you have something different. And it's hard. And that's when you're courting your spouse, there's a ton of people that they can choose from. So
Mm-hmm.
where does that connection? And that's where it's balancing that of, you know what, I like them. They make me feel a certain way, because if you didn't, then you wouldn't have that connection that's there.
No, it is. Everything is based on credibility, relationship. Everything is. I mean, everything that you do, when you wake up in the morning, if you're not going, I am excited for the opportunity. I love talking to people who are 5 years, 2 years away from retirement, and they're like, I can't wait to retire. And I go, what does that mean? I personally hate the word retire. If by definition, retire means to end or die.
Yeah.
Okay. So I coined reinventment. This is your opportunity you have earned to reinvent yourself. Find something that you're passionate about, getting up out of bed in the morning, because that's what's kept you alive, right? You look at some of the people who have quote unquote retired that have died literally right after, because they gave up their passion. You have to always have passion. You're always reinventing yourself. You always have to find a way to reinvent yourself. Reinvent yourself as a person, reinvent yourself as a spouse, reinvent yourself as a parent, reinvent yourself into what you want to accomplish. Because if you don't have goals, you have no purpose. You have no purpose, there's no sense in living. And I just think that there's ways that everybody can take a hard look at yourself and go, how do I get 1% better? We talk to young people about get 1% better every day. But we seem to get lost in the chaos of life as we get older, that we have lost control, or we're in a situation we can't get out of. And I think the mental part of that, and why I love the things that you've been doing, is it's all about get outside of your head and start looking at the realities of your situation. First, identify it. Second, come up with a plan that is going to help you get 1% better every day.
Yeah, that's the key, that second part. It's the action, because we can have catchy phrases and fun signs and all this stuff, but if we don't take action to what we are talking about, then it's useless. Okay, question number 2, which goes into this, is would you rather always know the right answer or always make the right decision?
Man. Man, I tell you what, I would rather, I think you have to understand my mindset for me to answer that question effectively. I've always tried to put myself in a position where I didn't ask a question I didn't know the answer to already. To know the answer, I think I think it limits our ability to learn. I think one of the smartest quotes I've heard in the last several years here is Elon Musk said, if you're the smartest guy in the room, leave the room. And I think there's so much power in that, where it doesn't matter how smart you are. If you're not surrounding yourself with people who are bringing something to the table, you're ineffective. You're ineffective. You're dead in the water. If you're not learning, if you're constantly learning, you're not improving.
Yeah, I interviewed a gentleman, Coach Jeff Hubner. He's the head volleyball coach at Palm Beach Atlantic, and he was talking about the importance of that. And the way he phrased it is it's important to align yourself with people who have overlapping values, but not overlapping thought process. And to where, everybody in the room wants to learn, everybody in the room wants to be better. So you're aligned, so you find yourself in the right room, but it's people that are challenging, like you said, how you think, how you look at a certain situation, because we all look at it differently. So we have to have that open mind to say, okay, I'm going to come in here. I've got my ideas of the way I think it should be, but I'm going to be so open-minded that Dan could change my mind. And I think if we approach every situation and not that division of one side of the aisle or the other, and say, you know what, I have my ideas, but if he presents such a good case, then I need to go back and look at what my ideas are and see if there's some semblance of that I need to really reconsider my point of view.
I think it's very interesting you bring that up. I mean, if you take a look at the evolution of where we are right now as a society, we're so caught up in our lives to a point where we feel like our voice has to be heard and our opinion matters. And social media has definitely given everybody that voice, right? But the reality is, I make it a point not to make my opinion heard in a lot of cases, or my views, whether it be politically or religion, is because I want to learn from other people. I want to understand how they think, because what it does is it reinforces how you think or it changes how you think. I like using this analogy with a lot of people is your perception is your reality. Okay. But reality is actually this. It's your perception that creates your reality, but it may not be reality. I feel like my job in a lot of cases is helping people move closer to what reality actually is. But you can't disrespect how their reality is perceived, because that's what makes us all unique, right? Is our ability to think, how our ability to feel. But if you think you're right, you're wrong.
Yeah, it's I hope the audience really heard and allowed that to sink in, is that we've got to have a good understanding of where we're at, and really how strong is our ego to say that we're right all the time.
And I think that goes back to the car thing. Listen, we all want to have nice things. And I love using this analogy. I asked this person one time, is like, and especially when people get into, well, what does it cost? What does it cost? I'm like, that's a nice looking shirt. Where'd you get that? Oh, I bought this at Dillard's. And I'm like, they have shirts at Walmart.
Yeah.
You'd have paid probably 40 to 60% less. And all of a sudden it's offensive. Is understand what you pay for. You can get cheap. You can find cheap anywhere, but you're going to get the lesser result than what you anticipated. Service has value. It's not the cost, it's the value of what you're paying for.
Yep. Because if you have that perceived value of it's worth the money, then it's worth it. It's like when people's like, well, I don't have the money. Well, possibly, but you've spent plenty of money on things that
were irrelevant.
That didn't move you forward. I was telling my son the other day, it's like, ooh, if I could go back, I would have spent my money, the little that I had when I was younger, on other things, because I had stereos and I had this and I had that. So I have nothing to show for it. Where if I went back, I would look at investing it in experiences, investing it in, maybe not taking a job, but actually volunteering to go learn from someone. So then I was better off in 2 years versus than just taking a basic job to go, if I had the opportunity. Again, not everybody has the opportunity, but it's really forward thinking and saying, okay, where's the value and what's it going to cost?
Well, I disagree. I think everybody has the opportunity. Do they have the ability?
Correct. Yep.
I think it's the ability. I mean, I may not be able to switch a job because I'm depending on that paycheck to pay for my family, but I have the opportunity to leave and find something else. It's all risk reward, right? I love talking to young people about, we were talking about success, right? What is that secret of success? And it's not hard work, it's sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice to achieve that goal? Sacrifice is the main ingredient to success, not just overcoming failure. It's the sacrifice you're willing to make. In your career, in your relationships, what are you willing to success? And now you've got young people that have the opportunity to make a lot more money, or you have a lot of young people that come out thinking they're going to make X number of dollars coming out of college, and it's just not realistic. So, again, it's all about having those mentors. It's about gaining information, and our education system has failed a lot of our young people in so many different ways because we're not preparing them as a parent. I love going back and watching things, right? I saw something on social media a few years ago is don't blame the millennials. They weren't born this way.
Yeah.
And I love the new Gen X videos because that's our generation, right? We didn't buy a water bottle. We drank out of a hose. We rode in the back of the pickup truck with no seatbelts. Yeah, we survived, the jarts. But understanding the challenges, I love looking at these young people right now and literally remembering who I was at 16 years old, at 18 years old, at 22 years old, because I look at this generation and they're a heck of a lot more mature than we were.
Oh, yeah.
They have a lot more pressures put on them now than we ever had. And I'm very proud of them, of how most of them handle their situation. But, we also have to be better as parents to prepare them for what that reality is, because we want them to become that functional adult.
Well, the world's moving so much faster. When you were talking about that, it made me think of, we put a lot of pressure on young people, me included, super guilty as charged, because we see how fast the world is moving and how just ruthless that it can be. And if you're not prepared and learning how to make good decisions and right decisions aligned with your values, aligned with your goals, then it's going to be really tough. Now, all of us have learned the hard way, like we talked about earlier, through failures and making man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. So we have to be able, like you said earlier, as parents to be able, and adults, to communicate effectively to young people about cost reward. And, is this a team decision or is this a selfish decision that you're making because it feels good in the moment? And it's hard. It's really tough because we say, well, let kids be kids. But the world at this point is not constructed to allow kids to be kids, because if they don't take their school seriously, if they don't do some of the things that you and I may have let just kind of slide, the world's going to pass them by, and it's going to be a harder road, harder road, I guess it would be, than it would be if they just listened.
Yeah, but I think the other side of that is the fact that we have so many, and we're all guilty of it, right? We don't want our kids to make the same mistakes we did. We don't want them to fail. We're such helicopter parents now that we're not giving them the opportunity to learn, because I would much rather watch my child fail knowing I can be there for them to help them recover than all of a sudden they're young adults. And now, that lesson just isn't going to happen. And that's where that danger zone hits. I don't want my kids moving home at 30, 32 years old with 2 or 3 kids. I want them to be successful. I'd rather them make mistakes when they're in our presence so that we can help them recover. So it's kind of like, don't keep them from hitting the ground. Just be there to help them get up off of it. And it's tough. It's tough as a parent. It's tough because you have so much weighing on you from a love standpoint, from an expectation standpoint. So there's such a balance, and there's no manual to being a parent. There really is. All we have ever done is used our own experiences, right, wrong, or indifferent, and tried to create a path that we believe is the right thing for our children. And it's a learning process. It's if you have 3 kids, historically, the oldest one has always gotten the blunt of everything, and the third one has always gotten away scot-free, because there is a level of fatigue as a parent that you go through.
Yeah.
But, you also have to have faith. Faith has got to be in there. And no matter what religion you practice, there's a reason why it exists. There is a faith in what you do and how you do it, and what the future looks like.
Yeah. And I like what you said about, allowing them to fail and knowing that you're just there to help them back up. And that's, when you were saying that, I was thinking 100% as a parent, that's our role. But as a friend, as another adult in our society and our community, is we can't judge people who make the wrong decision without all the answers, without all the data and information. And what 16, 17-year-old, they physiologically don't have the capacity to think that like that and process all that's going on. And so we can't judge them and their character for making a bad decision. It's just part of it. We've made stupid decisions. I was thinking the other day about just a particular situation that me and my cousins were in. I'm going, what? Like, what in the world did we even think that was a good idea? Knowing now, I look back and I was talking to my cousin about it the other day. I'm going, what were we thinking? I mean, one little thing could have gone wrong that would have changed the course of both of our lives and potentially somebody else. And it's amazing. And I'm glad that I'm not judged by that. And I'm glad that this world, when I grew up, did not have a cell phone, which adds to I think the pressure of trying to protect our kids from protecting choices, and then even more the importance of who you surround yourself with.
Well, that, and it's also information overload. I mean, you have access to everything now. I mean, I don't know how many times I've told my kids that forgot something, and I'm like, that thing that you play video games on is actually a computer. Put it in the calendar. Like, it's more than just texting your friends and playing video games. But you brought up a name earlier that I want to go back on, is Lowood. So yeah, Lo and I have known each other for almost all of our lives. I mean, Lo went to a Apopka with me, and he was a year behind me at Apopka, and our friendship was built on the football field as well. And we've maintained our friendship for a number of years. And again, an example of somebody else who has done everything that he can to make a difference in people's lives. And, again, surrounding yourself, having a tribe, have incredible people around you. And that's hard. Going back to kids, I mean, it's hard for them to realize that all your best friends in high school, we know now, you may keep in touch with a handful of them. Your true relationships are built in college and outside of that. But again, they've got to learn that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Question number 3. So usually that's what I love these, because they just,
man.
No, it's great. And I've had this happen several times because there's just good things that come out of these. All right. So the next one is, would you rather have pizza or tacos?
Ooh. On what day?
This one may be the most controversial question around.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, man. Taco Tuesday is a big deal, but Pizza Friday night has been entrenched in my lifestyle since I was a child. I mean, that was like a treat when I was growing up. We didn't have a whole lot of money, so going out to dinner was Friday night in a Apopka at a local pizza place. But if you put a gun to my head, it's going to be pizza every day.
Now, do you have favorite toppings? Are you thin or thick? Or
man, I am pepperoni, mushroom, and extra cheese. I'm gonna be honest with you, the value anymore, man. You can't get a quality pie for less than $25 anymore. But the calzone, man, that's the best of all worlds right there.
Just a folded pizza in half. Where do you like to go? Is there places that you like to go in the area?
Yeah, I tell you who does a really good job with a New York pie is Tomasino's, and they've got 4 locations around Central Florida, but one right there in the Oviedo, Winter Springs area where I live, and I've known the owners really well for a number of years, and they've expanded really well. But I like theirs. I am dying to get a Lazy Moon, dude. That big, freaking 5-foot wide pizza. Just to say that I got it in the back of my SUV. But yeah, I mean, you've got, my wife's big into Chicago style, so it's always hard to find a really good Chicago pie. Rossetti's over on University does a really good job with that. But
If you ever
Yeah,
get over,
tacos, pizza. I
you get on
mean,
our side of town. So pizza, there's a new place over by Lake Buena Vista High School called Sal's Pizza on Daryl Carter Parkway going towards Apopka Island. It's legit. It's
yeah,
really, they do it by the slice. So you can get a bunch of different ones. That one's really good. So
yeah,
I like
yeah. And
pizza too.
anymore, man, I'm trying to keep it from where I'm not eating 5 slices anymore.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
But
Okay. Last question is, if you came with a warning label, what would it say?
man, jump. Don't judge the book by its cover.
Okay. Explain.
You know, I had to learn the hard way that being 6'5" and 200 and sometimes 300 pounds, I'm a presence physically. And interacting with people, you have to counteract that. You know, you can't be as, I've got a deep voice. So Mike, like I could get into an auditorium of 300 people and I don't need a microphone. I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, again, growing up, you're trying to prove yourself. But I've learned over time is just talk a little softer. It is you think you understand somebody in the first 5 minutes, you really don't. You know, the old saying is you have a one chance to have a first impression, right? I think you have to really get to know people because you don't understand their stories. You can think you understand somebody. You could hear, oh, I've heard about Dan LaForest. I don't know if I like him, or Jeff Forrester. You know, it's. Do you really know that guy? I think that's something that I really cherish my relationships with because you know I've had putting yourself out in the public and doing certain things. You know, you do get a perception with people, and when you've got your tribe that know who you are, it's been nice to have people that have defended you and going, yeah, you need to know that guy. So yeah, don't judge that book by its cover. You know, get to know what's going. Because listen, you can meet somebody for the first time; they're having the worst day of their life.
Yep.
You really have to get to the heart of who people are, and so yeah, I
No,
think
that's good.
that warning label is, you know, tread carefully. But all seriousness is you know, know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
I mean,
And like what
deal.
we discussed earlier was having that open mind of not allowing other people to influence your perception of someone. And that's why I always try to reserve giving someone my thought about someone before they ever have a chance to meet them. And it's also grace, like you said, is you just don't know what happened that day that first impression came around. And you've got to allow yourself to, like, you've wanted a second chance. So you need to be willing to give someone else a second chance. You've wanted grace, you've wanted forgiveness. And it's why, you know, the Bible says, you know, forgive me of my sins so I can forgive those who, you know, have sinned against me. It's like, if I'm asking God for forgiveness, I've got to do the same thing and extend forgiveness and grace and an open mind to other people as well. So
Honestly, Jeff, I think I've learned over time that the people who get that labeled are the people who need that arm, that hand a lot more. There's something deeper going on that they're asking for help. Anytime I've ever heard that, I've wanted to find out for myself because again, I wanted to see who I don't want to take the word of somebody on judging them. Now you can hear, oh, this guy's a really good guy. This guy, you know, this lady's not that nice of a person. There's got to be a reason. And again, is there something there that you can help them identify? And yeah, I've always tried to make my own judge of character. But you know, the other thing too is you just can't save everybody either. So
no,
you know that's the hardest thing too is really identifying that. But
Well, Dan,
Yeah, it's sticky. It's sticky when you put yourself out there, and I've encountered that a few times where all of a sudden I get calls. Oh, so and so said this, and I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, they don't even know me. But the majority of the people who are relevant do know me, and it's nice to hear that they've defended you, or you have made that difference. You're never going to be perfect,
yeah,
but
and you can't.
having the self-awareness to understand that there is something that people perceive, I think is a great power, because it gives you the ability to change their mind.
And it also is a good lesson, like what you were sharing, is that make sure that if you're going to gossip, make it positive. Don't try to share things that you don't even know are facts because you heard something, you read some blurb somewhere that is going to tear someone down. What can you say? And if you can't say, yes, I was there, I saw Dan do this, then keep your mouth shut and say, you know what? I wasn't there, so I can't comment. Or whatever it may
if they're
be.
going to light themselves on fire, you don't need to throw gas on it.
Yeah,
it's going to happen naturally.
Right. It's important. Well, Dan, I started the Pathways to Greatness podcast 3 years ago with the idea of bringing people on like yourself to share insights, to share the information that you have, to virtually mentor people, so to speak, since we were using that term earlier, because everybody has a different pathway to greatness, and everybody has a different definition of greatness. And the one consistent thing with all the guests that I've had on is nobody's had a straight line. It's ups and downs, twists and turns. And so ultimately, I just want to encourage people and hopefully motivate and inspire them to not quit, just to continue to persevere and have resilience to move forward. So with all that being said, what would you say your definition of greatness is?
Being happy. Just being happy. I mean, success can be defined so many different ways. But I think at the end of the day, when you go to bed at night, did you have a good day? And if you didn't have a good day, I want to be able to wake up the next morning and be positive in how I'm going to change the outcome of what happened yesterday. But I think it's happiness. If you're happy with yourself and your effort and your mentality and your respect for people and what did you do today to change somebody else's life? I think that is by far the definition of success. That is the definition, is happiness.
So if you were talking to somebody, and I know that and we'll get, I don't want to use up all your time today because I know that you're busy.
It's like 3 episodes so far.
Yeah, right? Exactly. But when, while I've got you is, with that idea of being happy, you encounter so many people and a lot of young people and families that you work with. And happiness, like you said, is it's easier said than done. Just saying, don't worry, be happy, like the great song. But how do you encourage people to even know what that looks like? And what is something that you would help people see of what is that first step, that 1% better of living a happy life?
One, I think anytime you're trying to solve a problem, because essentially that's what you're doing, is identify the problem. If you're not willing to accept what the problem is, there is no way for you to find that light, that happiness, that resolution. You have to be honest with yourself. And that is so key in anything you're trying to improve. You can throw the hose in the pool all day long, but if there's a leak and you haven't fixed it, it doesn't matter. Or you could use a boat, or whatever the analogy you want to use, is you have to really take a hard look at yourself. And it could be your marriage. It could be a relationship with a child. Is if you don't start with you and find out, anybody who's ever been into a situation where you have conflict, is if you don't forgive yourself first, there's zero way anybody else can.
So how do you do that? I mean, I know that, and again, that's a loaded question, because if you had that perfect equation of what that looked like, you could write a book and off you go. How do you, again, encourage people that may have made that bad mistake, that had a confrontation that they wish they could take back, what are some things that you do to help counsel them in learning how to do that?
I had somebody tell me a whole long time ago. He was actually a defense attorney here in Orlando that I met years ago, and he goes, Dan, good people make mistakes. Bad people don't do good things. If you're a bad person, you're not going to do good things. But good people make bad decisions, and you have to identify who they are. If they're good people, you have to give them the ability to stay good people. And I thought that was very, very unique from somebody who defends people who have robbed banks or have done things. And this taught me so much of, if you don't understand the person you're dealing with, then you can't help them or you can't work with them. But first thing, again, I think is anybody who's conflicted has to identify what it is they're actually conflicted, because good people put a lot of pressure on themselves. They carry a lot of guilt, and they have to forgive themselves. They have to see that whatever they want to achieve is going to take a lot of hard work, but believe in who you really are. People make mistakes.
Yeah. And
not many people know how to overcome them.
Yep. And I really like what you said. And I hope the audience hears exactly what you said and how you said it. Is the first part of that. Good people make bad decisions. It's not, the decision doesn't define the person. And I think I know that's the big thing of whenever I've struggled with a bad decision, is I identified myself and who I was with that decision for too long. And that was what was eating me, is I had my identity in the wrong place.
Yeah. You've got to believe in who you are. And unfortunately, there are just bad people out there. They may try to do a good thing, but it doesn't make them a good person. But good people, listen, there's only one perfect person that's ever walked this earth, and that was Jesus Christ. And, at the end of the day, there's a reason why faith comes into play. And I tell people all the time, no matter what your faith is, you have to cherish it. You have to cherish it, because it's the one. There's two things that you can always rely on, for the most part: your faith and your family. And you've got families out there that have issues, and that's understandable. But those, your core family, and I'm not talking about your third cousins and everything else. Is you have that, and if you don't have that, then you create that. And family is, a guy like Low Wood. It's somebody like you. It's not, family's not necessarily blood.
I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking that the whole time.
Family is who you feel comfortable putting your heart in their hands, and you're trusting them with it. It's amazing the amount of people that I truly, my dad told me a long time ago, if you can count all your friends on one hand, and I mean your true friends, you're a fortunate person.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of faith in that, because, people get busy. I've got some long-standing relationships that I haven't talked to guys in a year. And I had a conversation with a guy this week, man. I'll be honest with you. I played football with him in college. We haven't talked in 25 years, almost 30 years. And we talked for an hour and a half the other day, and it was like no time had ever spent. And he's coaching football at Texas Tech, and he had no idea what I was doing here and everything else. And he's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, those are the fun ones where it feels like it's been an eon, but then when you talk, it's like nothing. There's no animosity. It's like, hey, man, life got in the way. Yes, we should have done better. We could have done better, but we didn't. But hey, I'm glad we're talking. And you may not talk to him again for another 10 years, but that's okay. Different people have different roles in our lives at different times, and it's nothing on them. and it's nothing on us either. It's just part of it. I mean, it's just all about relationships.
I think it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. Your best ability is availability. Be there when others need you the most, because it could be a difference in people's lives.
Yep.
Mentally, physically, the whole 9 yards. Is be available and be that credible source. And that's how you make a difference in the world. Everybody's so worried about what other people are doing instead of focusing on what's important, which is your family and your faith and your definition of success, not somebody else's.
Yep. And what I like about that is being available is one of the tactics that I use is if a name crosses my heart, my head, whatever term you want to use, I reach out, because that came through for a reason. And there has never been a moment where I haven't reached out to someone like, holy smokes, man, I was just thinking about you yesterday. Or if you send them, I had another gentleman say that he sends videos, like little 10-second, 15-second videos that just say hello and how much that person means to you. And inevitably everybody says that I needed that so bad today. Thank you. And there's a reason. Again, if you're a believer, to me, it's the Holy Spirit saying, giving me a nudge. And so I just try to be faithful and obedient to those nudges and reach out, because the name crossed my brain for some reason. So don't push it aside, because we've heard too many stories of, holy smokes, I was just thinking about them yesterday and now they're not here anymore. Or, whatever it may be, it's just something that's important to do. So Dan, before we run out of time, because again, like we talked about before, we could go on for hours in this conversation. I would really enjoy you sharing with the audience what you're doing with influencer council, and just how you're impacting young people and families.
Yeah, I tell you, this is an hour episode all by itself, so I'm going to try to keep it short. My passion, I've been very fortunate, again, to be in a position where I can influence sports at the youth level, provide guidance, promote. And I've done this because of my respect for the opportunities what youth sports and the ability to play at the college level provided for me. I would not be the man I am today. I would not be the father I am today. I would not be the businessman I am today if I had not encountered those experiences. So I've always tried to give back. But about 2 years ago, I got approached by a local sports and entertainment attorney, Ronnie Bittman, out of Lake Mary. We got connected through Jason Siegel from the Greater Atlanta Sports Commission. And we had a meeting, and he goes, have you ever thought about being a sports agent? And I'm like, what, my dream job? And he goes, I'm dead serious. He goes, with your financial background, with your passion and your connections in the sport, I've represented celebrities and athletes on defamation and contract issues. This is something that I'm excited about. And I think us partnering together would be a really good thing. So here we are 2 years later, and we were very instrumental in the high school NIL being passed here in Florida. We spoke at a number of opportunities with the Florida Athletic Coaches Association, Night Coach of the Year. The FHSA asked me to come in and talk to the board and help them formulate what that would look like. I spoke to FIAAA last year, which are all the athletic directors in the state, appeared on a number of media outlets, not only locally but across the country, about NIL. And but in a world again with chaos, recruiting is chaotic for families and young people. As I said, to be wanted by so many people in a short period of time is very overwhelming for young people. But now added the legal and financial challenges. What the Influencer Council truly is, it's Bittman Law, Security Financial Management, and then to bring on somebody like Courtney Shaw to help them understand their brand value and develop their interpersonality. And you start talking about young people that are, how sports is treated anymore. It's no longer what we grew up with, where we played seasonal sports. They're committed to a sport now. It's 365. It's training. It's travel. It's all these different things, whether it's football or baseball or basketball. These kids are losing their identity of who they are. And I think that's something where Courtney's power, her ability, being a former Mrs. Florida, understanding what it takes to become who you are internally, to be able to connect with brands and understand what the power, the message, the platform that you're given is to teach these people what their power really is. I really feel like we have put together a solid team of professionals that can help not only high school athletes, but college athletes and professional athletes understand the opportunities. And my passion is, I grew up in Apopka. A lot of people know I played for Apopka, and how many guys went into the league from Apopka, not only Apopka, but Central Florida. And 4 out of 5 professional athletes are in financial distress or flat broke within 5 years leaving the game. And when I'm talking to a lot of my friends, and you talked about Low Wood, Aaron Jones is a good friend of mine, and I sat down with Aaron and kind of shared my vision with him, and he goes, Dan, nobody's doing this. And then I have relationships in the NFL and whatnot, and sharing this vision, and even talking to coaches, and programs is there's a right way to educate. There's a right way, and it's not being handled the right way because it's also new. Everybody's trying to figure this thing out. But the Influencer Council, we're working with some really solid professional or high school or college athletes, or helping certain high school athletes transition into that area now where you're talking about the letter of intent that we've all known and loved, where these kids are signing to go to a college, is going to be gone now, effective July 1st. They're signing contract with the universities. And I'm sorry, just because you're an attorney, just because you're a financial advisor, doesn't mean you understand NIL law and what these contracts are doing. And I think that's where Ronnie's specialty is. And again, this isn't about investing. This is about money management. There are so many things that I feel like we have put together that really give our guys an advantage. And even guys we don't represent, we're consulting on certain people because we can't represent, 500 kids. We've got to, or young people, they're not even kids anymore. They're young adults. We're trying to put together educational segments so that people can gain more knowledge. And again, I think I take, half my day is taking phone calls from people that just have questions and want to have a better understanding of what their opportunities are, what they're entitled to. And there's a lot of differentials. There's a lot of similarities right now with college athletics and the professional ranks, but there's also some disadvantages that aren't there at the college level that a lot of people are buying into that they don't understand. So, that's the Influencer Council, and it's kind of an unusual name, but, the reality is that you break it down. They're all influencers. That's what name, image, and likeness is. It's the ability to influence others. And then counsel is the fact that we're not sports agents. We're actually professional counsel.
Yeah, and it's so important. And what you talked about is, and we talked about this earlier in the episode, is kids are having to grow up a lot faster.
Yes.
And you've got 17-year-old and 18-year-olds having to make big boy decisions, and not
that
just
23 and 24-year-olds have a track record of failing at.
Right. And you have to, and parents, if you've never been a part of these type decisions, you love your kid unconditionally, but you could make some really bad decisions on their behalf. And it's scary. It's really scary to think, like we said earlier in the show, is the world's moving at a really fast pace, and it is ruthless, and it will chew up and spit kids out and adults. It does every day around the idea of money. So it's so important to have something like the Influencer Council, not just to counsel and represent on the legal side to protect you, but like you said, is just the identity part of that you are you first, and then everything else just feeds into that. And if you don't lose your identity of who you are, and it's not a football player, it's not a baseball player, it's not a basketball player, volleyball player, it's you, the individual that plays those things can serve you really well to accomplish your vision. And it sounds like, Dan, that you've created a really cool family, to use the word that we used earlier, to help these young people and families, find the direction that gets them closer to the goal that they're looking to accomplish.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's exciting because it's paid. I saw the opportunity as the first time I've been able to marry my profession with my passion. Yeah. And talking about somebody who's very grateful for the opportunity, I'm definitely grateful, because if I have the ability to change the lives of a handful of young people with some amazing opportunities, that right there, we talked about going to bed and sleeping really well, I'll be able to sleep really well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Dan, again, I want to be very sensitive of your time. What would you say are some parting remarks you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Well, I tell you, just like anything else, I have people come in and ask me, Dan, why should you be my financial advisor? And I think it's rhetorical. Why should I be? I think you have to ask a lot of people a lot of questions. You have to pick a team that you feel like has your best interests. I'm not for everybody. There's a lot of great guys actually in out in the financial industry. There's a lot of great guys in the sports entertainment industry. You just have to be very careful and very cautious and start asking yourselves what's important to me whenever you look for professional services. One of the taglines we use at Security Financial Management is it's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep. So that's always a great one that I love. But I just enjoy helping people, and my financial clients are loyal to me because I've been loyal to them. And this new opportunity to work with young people in this new sports world, I just feel very fortunate to be in a position. But it's taken a lot to get here.
Yeah, no, and that's goes back to what we said earlier, is that, everybody has a perception of an overnight success, but nobody saw the blood, sweat, and tears for the past 20 years that has set you up for this spot of where you're at today. And that's what makes us valuable to other people. And to echo, not to take away from what you said, but to add to it, is surround yourself with a team, personally and professionally, that has your best interest at heart, similar values, different direction, different thought process, and allow yourself to grow. But Dan, thank you. I appreciate you coming on today.
And there's one more I want to leave, because there was an attorney here in Orlando that used to say, "You're not hiring my firm, you're hiring me." And I feel like that too. It's you're getting me, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, I'm going to be there with you. And that's always been something that's been very true to my heart.
Yeah. No, thank you. So how can people find and follow you?
You can find me on all the social media platforms. You can find SFM, Security Financial Management, SFM Advisor Group, sfmadvisorgroup.com. You can find the Influencer Council, influencer-council.com, Team Council on all the socials. And then I'm sure a lot of people that do follow you, know me on social media. So my LinkedIn page, Dan LaForest. I'm not hard to find. I actually had a professional, a former NFL agent reach out. He goes, "Man, I was Googling NIL in Florida and your name kept popping up." So he reached out to me. He's like, "Yeah, I used to be Jim Kelly's former agent." And I'm like, "Wow." And he's like, "Man, I really love what you're doing." And believe it or not, his name's Greg Downey, and he is now teaching law at Full Sail. So now we've got Full Sail relationships that we're utilizing now. And it's a super guy. Cool. He's been a wonderful asset and relationship that we have formed as well. So
that's awesome. See, just because you think he's where he needs to be, he also has mentors and people that are influencing him. So
absolutely.
Dan, thank you for the conversation today. I really appreciate it. Hang tight after we end this thing. But ladies and gentlemen, I just hope you find all that information that he shared. It'll be in the show notes. Look for him. It's not just sports that he talks about. He can help in a lot of different ways, but it's been a lot of fun with this conversation today, Dan.
Thanks, Jeff.
No problem. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan LaForest. Thanks for joining us on the Pathways to Greatness podcast. We hope that today's conversation inspired you to take steps towards your own greatness. Remember, every journey starts with a single step. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Actually, share it with 3 people that you might think it might benefit. Until next time, keep pursuing your passions and carving your own path to greatness. Take care.